welcome back. So it's Sean, and this is another Chat with Sean episode, and another great guest today. Looking forward to this one big time. But yeah, we'll get on to some admin stuff as usual, some housekeeping, and we'll get on to some intros and get into those topics because, yeah, the industry's red hot right now. So we've got a lot to get onto. But yeah, in terms of admin, a lot going on the channel. So many videos, even on editing or just filmed or whatever. So I've recently chatted with a couple at the AMSIF agency, Jamie D'Alessandro and Josh Squires, and yeah, we had a great chat about everything in the SEO world, obviously from a digital marketing agency perspective. But yeah, really fascinating discussion. I had Garrett Sussman on recently. That's out there. You know, Garrett's brilliant, and it was a great conversation. So check that out. All the links be in the description as usual. I had Anne Smarty on not that long ago. Again, she has so much great knowledge and insights. So yeah, we discuss everything from Reddit to e-commerce. So definitely check that out. And I've also just filmed another real talk with Sean and Itamar Blau on Jerry White and Live Day. And yeah, it's awesome. I love them shows. It's like really bouncing ideas back and forth. So yeah, check that out. There's also other real talk with Sean's in the past that have been really great. So go and check those out. And then finally, I've been probably on the channel for a while, but I've done a bit of a deep dive into Wikipedia. And yeah, it was an interesting video, and that'll be out soon. So I filmed it, so just putting it together now, but obviously a bit of a deeper dive into Wikipedia and what they're doing. And yeah, so maybe some stuff you didn't know about or wasn't aware of. So yeah, check that one out. Yeah, I'll get on to my awesome guest. So it's obviously, you see, it's Dan Taylor. He's a partner and head of technical SEO at Bespoke International Technical SEO agency, SOAR, and speaker at events like BrightonSEO, Google Search Central Live, and many others. And I'm sure you know about him and should follow him on LinkedIn. But yeah, thanks, Dan, for joining me today.
No, thank you for inviting me on, Sean.
Yeah, awesome. Like, yeah, you've been putting some great stuff out there on LinkedIn, so obviously I want to get your views on it. There's so much going on, but you know, there's so much conversation. You know, what should SEOs really be focused on now more than ever, in your opinion?
No, that's a good question. So I know we're going to touch on AI a little bit further down here. So I'm actually going to probably be against the grain here. And I'm actually not going to talk about being AI, something to really mention on now, because I think one of the other challenges that is going in some circles quieter than it should in SEO circles is that around justifying and proving ROI, because we've got the Gartner quote from last year that search engine volume will drop by 25% by 2026. We've got the great decoupling. We've got businesses seeing diminishing organic search. It's the differences there, but for me, it's the attribution and ROI parts. And one of the things I've been focusing on more with clients recently, especially in the past kind of year, is trying to quantify and look at the second order effect of what actually comes from marketing. And you can actually do this if you ever feel like you're having a too easy day and you want to delve into GA4 more than you want to. You can actually set up custom reports in the Explore functionality that allow you to actually see the number of users who their first default channel group comes from organic, and then their subsequent channel groups are non-organic. Now, you can't obviously break it down too much because of privacy and all the good stuff there, but you can actually start to see, well, yeah, people are coming from organic at different stages now of their journey, because AI is influencing the top of funnel. Things like TikTok and Instagram are influencing the top of funnel. The internet is changing shape, it's evolving, it's not as linear as what we've had it. But being able to actually kind of show, well, okay, but direct attribution and value of organic might be, I'm not going to say declining, but it's just there's other mechanisms and methods of which people are getting online and of finding things out now, but isn't necessarily creating touch points for the site, but being able to see, well, if we potentially turn off organic, that may impact direct by 20%. That could impact social, because it's creating those brand touch points, and then the secondary reasons is why people necessarily come back.
Have you done that yourself, and what actions have you taken from that, what you see?
Yeah, so like I said, you can set it up quite easily in GA. I say for GA4, you can set it up quite easily. and explore. Let's caveat the context around the word easy there. But being able to actually show wider stakeholders that actually for a long time, organic isn't just that like people click on a search result, people click through from AI mode, AI overviews, and they come to your site, they perform actions. I think for years we've had that attribution issue because of how the funnel is. People come, they'll research, and they may come back direct. They may start typing it out, see it autofill in the browser. We've always had a slight disadvantage in that way just because of the nature of how organic is used. But to be able to actually have a quantifiable percentage of, well, 30-40% of your direct traffic over this time frame actually come from people who first visited your site through organic. So it's like, well, they wouldn't have come direct if they didn't have that. I mean, you may have had to capture them. What percentage of those you captured through other channels? It just kind of helps qualify that value more, because then you can also drill it down to revenue, you can drill it down to lead. So you can almost like the notion of it's called second order. So it's like the secondary effect of that actual organic touch point, and being able to kind of qualify that. Well, organic is also the visibility in the different AI features in Google. There's some part playing the visibility in LLMs. It's not just a straight, oh, the traffic and rankings are the same again, term and tap off kind of system, which I feel has been pigeonholed in for quite a number of years. And now it definitely has to break out of that as quickly as possible if it's going to have the same longevity as a practice and not just be discarded for whoever's selling the fancy sounding thing next kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a valid point. Like you say, I think we've been underselling ourselves in the past, as you say. And this is a chance more than ever, because, I mean, I don't know if you've seen this, but definitely in my job, like the spotlight is really on organic at the moment because everything going on is search. So if you ever could do things about it, it should be now, you know, in terms of showcasing how strong organic can be and how, you know, how influential it is.
Yeah, we've got one of the most active audiences we've had as an industry for a number of years. And when you see the pieces in like Economist, in the Times, in things like that, in where you're seeing C-level stakeholders, but you're seeing people who aren't that SEO manager or internal digital marketing manager read, they're actively taking on information that may or may not be accurate, depending on your point of view. And ultimately, you want their point of view to align with your point of view, as long as it's driving, obviously, value, because ultimately you're the one getting or hopefully being paid as a vendor for the work. So you can't be relying on external forces to shape the conversation. You need to be as much a part of that narrative as possible and being at that forefront, because the audience is hungry for the information.
Yeah, I mean, I feel we've all been there when someone high up has read a blog or seen something on X or whatever, and they're like, oh, they think, and then they start saying that they know everything about it, but yeah, now it's even more in the limelight. You're going to get perhaps more of that. So yeah, top kind of comment there.
Well, it's been the same for a number of years. Like I'm sure you can remember going back 9-10 years ago when Demandware, before it became Salesforce, you still had to have a HTTP and a HTTPS version of a site. It was impossible to merge the two due to the technical reason. So every now and again, you'd get some random cold email to someone senior saying, oh, you're causing this much code bloat because you've got XYZ and then just this rogue screenshot. And it'd be like, yeah, we know, it's on the Jira board. Like your choices, you can re-platform or understand it's not actually an issue and you're still making millions, just weigh up. But yeah, we're all susceptible to that.
Yeah, for sure. And I know you said about this on your LinkedIn, and I've actually tried to stay a bit out of the conversation because it looks like one of those hot potatoes in the SEO world. But what do you make of the whole SEO versus GEO situation?
Well, I have a few varied thoughts on this. So I'm going to look at it first from a technical angle. So if we want to have two practices of SEO and GEO, I first think we need to delineate which one does. So if we look at Google ecosystem to start with, you've got search, you've got AI mode, AI overviews, and you've got Gemini. Now, AI mode and AI overviews are seen by Google as search features. They're reported on via Search Console and they use the same crawling, they use the same back-end systems as search does, apart from the serving stage, it grounds itself on the search index, and then AI mode has the query fan out. From a technical systems perspective, yes, they may weigh certain things in a different way, much like different sectors in SEO will have different weights on links, on trustworthiness, on content, because it's what the internet is. If it was blanket, then SEO would be a lot easier. But it is essentially still the same SEO infrastructure, but we just have to adapt for grounding. And so with grounding, it's understanding of what the corpus is saying, making sure we're aligned, making sure topics are aligned. And then with the query fan outs, it's just a exciting time for full expansion of not, like we've always, for a while, we've been talking about moving away from keywords, and it was like from strings to things, I think was quoted about 6-7 years ago as well, and all that good stuff. Now with fan out, it is like, well, you need to be more, rather than targeting a handful of keywords, it's what is your position on these keywords? Are you indexed to these terms? What does your document speak to? Does your document have relevancy for all based by document, meaning page? So it's a slight nuance there in practice, but essentially is SEO. Now, Gemini operates its own crawlers. It has similar systems to search, as like tokenization, deduplication, and things like that, but they're similar systems, but not the same systems, so that processing stage. And then serving, it just grounds itself on the search index. So if you wanted to do a delineation there, Gemini would fall into GEO, because that technically is a generative engine, whereas AI mode and AI overviews are just souped up features of search, which would be SEO. So then if you wanted to do GEO even further, you'd throw in like your Perplexities, your ChatGPTs, your non-Google AIs as well, so like Baidu's Ernie, Yandex Alice, Neva's, Hyperclover. They're similar. They kind of have a foot in SEO and a foot in GEO. So it's kind of, what do we want to move it on? Now, the second angle I've got on it is you want for me, the stance on this needs to at least be on the forefront with clients, because if you go on LinkedIn or just on the internet, let's be honest, and ask what is GEO, you'll get many different answers and many different outputs as to what it is. And I think an element of driving that is it's something new. It's something that feels like it can be early commoditized and sold. So there's a kind of a salesy push kind of happening from that as well, which always happens with new stuff. So if your client's seeing things, if things are working, the way I've always approached this is, it probably doesn't matter what we're calling it, as long as we're doing the right things around it. And my only gripe would it be is if for AI mode and AI overviews, that seems like, oh, you need GEO as additional for that. That's the slightly grey area for me in sales ethics and things like that. But yeah, we're going to have that breakdown. I mean, you've got GEO, you've got LLM SEO, you've got AEO, AI, EO. I mean, you probably dip your hand in a Scrabble bag and pull something out, but as long as it ends in O, you've probably got it. But it's because I think also a signal that because we're at such a point in the industry where this is massive disruption, and it's not just with SEO, it's with the internet as a whole and how information is consumed. It's on a couple of decks I actually call it in, I have a slide which shows 3 different eras of information consumption. You got the first era, which is bus adverts and out of home stuff, like the classic stuff on the side of trams that we see in old-timey things. And that slowly seeps into radio, or as my granddad would call it, more wireless. Then the second internet phase kind of became like your phone books, your televisions, elements like that, newspapers. And then you got Google, you got the internet, then you started getting social. I feel like we're moving out of that epoch of information consumption, and now we're going into image search. Like a good stat from Google that Gen Z is their fastest growing demographic in search, according to their data. But 1 in 10 of those searches are starting with Google Lens or Circle to Search as opposed to a traditional search query, and 1 in 5 of those is commercial intent. And that was a stat from Search Central Live in Bangkok a couple of weeks ago. So or people are just interacting with the internet is changing. And I think the whole GEO argument, this is just an extension of 2-3 years ago when we was all arguing if TikTok was a search engine or not. I think, so just my 2 cents on that, it's not a search engine. We're just applying language, which I think we're comfortable with to it. It's just another medium of information consumption. Yes, it has a search feature. So does your documents on like your desktop. Like, it doesn't make it a search engine. It's just information retrieval on a different medium. But that's how the internet is changing shape. It's just the next phase, really. And I have said a few times, I think as an industry for SEO, I personally feel quite happy that AI and GEO and all that seems to have fallen to us, because I feel it's giving us a massive extension strategy as an industry. Because if this had fallen to like the social media managers and stuff, it wouldn't have had the same impact, and we would probably be facing a mass diminishing level. But because it's basically rooted in information retrieval, which is what core SEO is, we've at least got a chance of AI not taking a lot of jobs over the next 10 years at least.
Yeah, so many good points then. Like, that's why I wanted you on, because you deliver it fantastic. Yeah, I agree. I think I must admit, like, just a few, I don't know, the beginning of the year when this all started kicking off, I would have been extremely concerned about quite a few people's jobs, in the SEO world. And now the way it's playing out, it does seem like we're probably a lot more safer than I would have thought at that point. And obviously it's going to be the best that remain. Obviously some will be eaten up in terms of we seeing like lower level executive jobs, not as many of them out there anymore, but generally if you're doing a decent enough job and you're evolving with what's going on, then you should be in a pretty decent place, going forward.
And evolution looks different in different places, because if you're an agency that just works with local businesses, that evolution of how you need to adapt is going to be very different to somebody who works purely with e-commerce. And you're going to have those conversations around what is and isn't relevant with clients, but it ultimately is just it's the next stage. There's ways we've done things historically, which we don't necessarily have to stop doing, but we have to adapt to it. So like content's a really good example. Content in SEO for me has always been weirdly misunderstood, because I think it's mostly been seen as a means to an end for rankings, traffic equals value. But now you've got pieces of content now. If you look at the funnel for me is relatively broken, because we've always had that linear stage approach, whereas the journey's become multimodal. People using different platforms at different stages, consuming different medias at different points. We need the content to still appear in traditional SEO, because all sites I still see still get a lot of organic traffic. It might not always be the biggest driver. Some sites get a lot of direct, depending on their brand and their purpose, but it still typically drives most traffic to most sites. I don't see that fully dropping off anytime soon, because paid budgets are expensive. And I feel if social was going to take on a much bigger role in terms of links and things like that, and show referral traffic, it may have done that already because it's relatively established. And if you look at Meta's ecosystem and what their penetration rate is globally, I think it's 450 billion people have access to a Meta product every day. Social's still relatively small on a lot of sites, I think. So I feel that hasn't and probably won't increase too much, but we need the content for the SEO. We need content to be served in AI search features, but then we need the documents on the page, whether or not they're technical, different elements, so that they can be collated by bodies like Common Crawl, for example, who archive a lot of content. And then the LLMs go to people like Common Crawl, download their data sets and use them for the training sets. So it's we also need content to appear in training sets potentially. So it is no longer that kind of model of, let's put lead magnet here, blog post here, CTA here. It's now we need this content might serve multiple needs. It might serve one need, but it needs something out there. And it's just cultivating that entire ecosystem.
Yeah, I think they're great points. I think that's obviously what people who are seeing dips in traffic, obviously a lot of people have been hit, but it's like an educational piece, isn't it? Yeah, like you'd say, it has more value than just the traffic alone, and traffic is just one metric that you should be looking at, but it plays a much bigger part, and it always has, but now perhaps more than ever. So yeah, no, valid points. And in terms of, we touched on it a bit, but in terms of like, what do you make of the current like AI sort of large language model race? You know, people joining the party all the time, and things are evolving quickly. Obviously, AI mode in the UK now. Where do you see it going, or what do you make of it? Or what do you make of AI mode?
I think it feels like the logical next step that Google were going to take. I mean, since they launched AI mode in the UK, they have now started testing, I forget what it's called, but it's a more immersive SERP experience with AI built in different elements. I think, again, we're used to the directory style approach of, hey, it's just a list of links, whereas it's now becoming that immersive element. And realistically, if we look at other search engines, this isn't new. Like Neighbor, for example, over in South Korea, I think mostly on some of their pages, even for major terms, you have 3 to 4 organic results, which are classed as organic. Everything else is pulling through from different features like Neighbor Cafe. You're going to have hyperclover features on there now. They're also looking at launching an AI tab using their model. Neighbor, interestingly as well, have also just got some data centers in Morocco and look like they may be looking at the European market, but that's a potential different kettle of fish. But then you've got other like similar things, like I said, like Yandex, after the past 2-3 years, they're keeping their search operations primarily in Russia, Turkey, Kazakhstan, places, Kyrgyzstan, places like that. But they've got registered offices now in the Netherlands, and that's operating their AI robo-taxis, self-driving. They're operating taxi applications in different countries through Go and Yandex Go. They do exactly the same in China. You can do payments, video calls, chat, social media, search. It's an ecosystem. And all Google feels like to me is doing is kind of becoming more of that ecosystem, because we already have Drive, we have hardware devices, we have, I know, the second era of Google Glass potentially coming out, which doesn't look as weird. And I tried the original Google Glass over at an event in Manchester about 11 years ago. And I was just amazed I had a head-up display with an arrow telling me where to walk on a map. Now I can see, I remember being amazed when my iPad came out, but something was touchscreen. But I'm really being aged here. I'm going to stop. But I see it's going to continue. There's always going to be new entrants to the market, because it's currently a boom market. And if you come in with a decent value proposition, a decent pitch deck, you could probably get a few million in seed funding, be comfortable, do an exit, and, it's the story of Silicon Valley in any kind of tech boom. In terms of LLMs themselves, there's very clear front runners who are getting clear penetration rates and clear growth. There's no real surprises to me outside of who's kind of growing, just based on the last couple of years. Obviously, each country's going to develop different ones. Like I said, you've got DeepSeek, you've got Ernie, you've got Hyperclover, Alice, depending on what country you're in. In terms of the tooling, though, we look at use, I still very much see SEO AI tooling. That's probably the best way of saying it. Is it's still very much in its infancy. And because we've got no technical documentation for the LLM platforms, and you and I can go on AI mode now and do the same query and we'll get 2 very different results. And then we'll ask it for the JSON fan out list and we'll get 2 different results. It's almost like worth understanding your rough visibility, but you can't really compare it to anyone else because there's no way to mass scrape. And if you are mass scraping that, it's so expensive. And I know there's really good tools out there like Profound, which I've been trialing, and I use Noatoa as well, which is Mike Buckby, which are doing a really good job at it and actually providing a level of quantification. But I feel it's still so very much in its infancy that I'm hesitant now if a client turns around and goes, oh, so what should I have the KPIs be for visibility? At the moment, my response is just, let's just show up first and then work this out, because I think we're so trained to having that rank track style visibility, or the Systrix visibility graph kind of level on insight on things. And this technology just doesn't necessarily work in that way and doesn't produce static results in that way.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm getting questions on that as well. It's it's a difficult question to answer because we haven't got the answers yet, as you say, and there are some good tools that are kind of building out things. We had this discussion on Real Talk about there's no real SEO tool out there right now that does everything we need at this current stage. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. Do you think there'll ever be a stage where ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity or whatever actually give you any sort of data analytics around your performance?
So, okay, so I've got 3 different responses to that. So if we look at AI mode and AI overviews and things like that, I think the way that those produce results and do the fan outs and register positions and things like that, because it's part of search, the data goes to Search Console. Search Console databases aren't geared for that type of information retrieval because Search Console's databases are very much that ranked third. You got this impressions, got this clicks, let's just log this average position kind of thing. Because they don't follow that model, for us to see that visibility, if they ever did that breakout, I'd have to see a very large re-engineering of the Search Console ecosystem. And there's a lot of databases there which have been going on for decades perfectly. So it's just whether or not that investment would bring Google anything. In regards to things like Gemini and other third-party LLMs, I think yes. And I think it's going to be driven by one element, which I think is one of the more interesting things. So in the past 24 hours, Perplexity have made the bid for Chrome of like 34 something billion. Now, I think they've actually understood that the way for them to grow is through penetration. And Chrome's like obviously the biggest browser globally, like in pretty much most markets. If you can get into that, you can integrate Perplexity as the default search engine. You then are able to start collecting user data through the browser, similar to how Google does with Crux at the moment and other stuff. So then, if you make a £34 billion investment, you're not doing it just for the market penetration. Right? You're doing that because you've then got this audience, and you can probably, like, again, this is going to show my age, you can then probably start doing some Netscape Navigator level advertising banners on the browser bar. You can have people pay for premium browser to not have the advertising banners. Will there be a drop off in percentage? But ultimately, there's a reason why people stick with Chrome, because it's usually pretty good. It's usually everything else. But then you'll have businesses who will either move to Edge, if they're not going to lock down system, they'll move to another browser, because the Chrome will automatically have all these adverts in, and there'll probably be new user agreements and new licensing for where data can be stored or whatnot. So they'll not be able to do that from a business perspective. And you'll have a level of individuals who will basically not want to pay for the ads. So they'll pay for the ad-free version of Perplexity's Chrome potentially. But if you're selling adverts on the browser at a browser level, then you need to actually provide advertisers with a form of quantification system. So then it's going to be right. What kind of user demographics are you showing this to? Oh, if you're using Perplexity Search, if you've got that data, that enables you to integrate ads into Perplexity Search as well. So it actually opens up an ecosystem for a paid level within that browser. And like I said, you then need almost AdSense-y kind of interface for that, as well as your revenue streams. Now, if they start offering that data, ChatGPT wants to start offering payments and stuff, and they want to do search and everything else. If they don't start offering that data as well, it's going to be very difficult. If you're talking to a CMO or you're talking to a high level marketer and you go, right, you've got $100 million to spend on paid over the next 2 quarters or quarter, you can either go invest in Perplexity's search ecosystem. We can see search terms, we can see user demographics, and we can do that targeting, or you can get a limited version with ChatGPT. So they're going to lose out on investment from our user side and not see that growth. So I think if it goes through, will be a growth stimulator in that metric space. Because I think realistically, if Google didn't have paid ads, we wouldn't have Keyword Planner. And a lot of third-party tools get data from Keyword Planner. SEOs with access to good paid accounts can get access. I can remember when Keyword Planner didn't have that stupid payment restrictions in it, so you could literally open it and use it. Keyword Researcher have stupid obfuscated numbers, but it all stems down to what makes money. And I don't see, 34.5 billion is a lot of money to spend on something, and they'll want an accelerated ROI. And just having market penetration and selling premium subscriptions isn't going to generate 34 billion quickly. I think we'll go down that paid model. We'll turn it into a system. You then have it on phones. You have it in different areas. It makes sense as a great disruptor.
Yeah, I saw that myself. I didn't read much about it, but yeah, I don't know what was it. Has it been rejected or accepted, or they don't know yet?
I've not seen it as being accepted or rejected, but I think there was a sniff. I don't know how true it was, but I heard a rumor about 2 weeks ago. I don't know how true this is. This is the internet. About Yahoo were potentially looking at buying Chrome as well because of all the antitrust thing. Yahoo bought Chrome. That would be a really. See, if I was Google, I would be looking at Yahoo and kind of going, yes, I will sell to Yahoo over Perplexity because Google's future is with AI. As much as having data from Chrome can help the algorithms, can help everything else, having Perplexity take over a massive market penetration asset effectively frees you out as the default search engine by default, and then you have to do the rigmarole to change it and other stuff. I think the market share loss and impact loss or impact they would have from Perplexity buying Chrome versus Yahoo would be, it's much less for two evils, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. It'd be very interesting they sell. And maybe they'll be forced to. We don't know what's going on with those trials and stuff.
Even if they're forced to sell, though, I imagine the decision of who they sell to will be up to them. If it's a case of you have to sell by this date, there'll be a bidding process because they'll put together, the DOJ will probably put together some sort of timeline of, right, you have 9 months to sell. We put this out to tender. It's not like the entire world hasn't known this for a while. So everyone will know stuff. They'll probably, like an RFP process, they'll have 3 months together to put together bids or something like that, or something. And this is very an arbitrary explanation of what I think will happen. And then there'll be obviously rejections, things like that. But ultimately, I don't think they can be forced to sell it for a certain amount. Obviously, they'll be betting on who they sell it to, but they could turn around and rather than selling it to Amazon, selling it to ChatGPT, selling it to Perplexity, they could turn around and sell it to URI for £1, just so it doesn't fall into like those hands. Obviously they'll want an ROI, but I don't think they'll be forced to sell it for a certain amount as long as it goes to a non-damaging bet, and then they'll be, obviously they can't just sell it for us for £1 and then lease it back for 50p a year or something like that just to get the data. But
yeah, no, they're valid points actually, and it would make sense when Perplexity are like, a lot of people fans of Perplexity. It's like a very popular platform, and it would put another rocket up their backside in terms of growth. So
yeah. Google makes money from ads, and it makes money from premium subscriptions. So if you've got something which will literally take away your ad ecosystem in favor of its own, and then you're relying on like the AdSense ads and display ads and things like that, and you can't do the ads served on your search engine because you're no longer the default search engine on. I mean, ultimately, that's one thing that Google have going for you. You're the default search engine on your own browser. You've got a huge market penetration and visibility. Perplexity will try and do everything as hard as possible to make it difficult to switch back to Google. You're going to lose on a lot of revenue, whereas you'd rather sell it to, this isn't diminishing you, but you're a much lesser of two evils versus Perplexity right now.
Yeah, I mean, Yahoo, I obviously, when I was young, they were the big dog, but definitely not the case anymore. But Amazon's interested as well in this space, isn't it? Because when I've tracked bots and stuff, Amazon bots are always everywhere. And when I've talked to experts about it, they're kind of, they're perplexed in their own rights about why Amazon are so active on certain websites with their bots. And some have alluded to maybe them building their own sort of, database themselves to kind of perhaps develop something larger in terms of like a large language model of some sorts themselves or whatever. So, who knows? Obviously, Apple have come out recently and said they're going to build their own sort of answer engine. So
that's in the same bracket as the rumored Apple search engine, isn't it? I think that's been about a decade old, that rumor about Apple were developing a search engine, and I mean, Amazon already have Rufus as an AI agent assistant, and okay, Bezos has his hands in Perplexity and things like that. But I'd be more interested to see with Amazon, like, what end does that meet if they develop their own large language model? Because for a lot of e-commerce searches, people just go straight to Amazon and they do the search there. People will do a search online, find out what product they want, and then they'll see if they can get on Amazon if they've got Prime. So you save on the delivery costs. It's developing your own LLM when you're already such a prominent part of that buying journey and decision-making process. It's just trying to understand what that end goal would be, because I don't think it would benefit the current ecosystem. So it's, again, what else are you looking to move into?
I mean, they just pulled out of Google Ads, didn't they? If I remember rightly, they pulled out of investing in those, if I'm correct, or something along those lines.
Well, if you do a product search and you get that little product carousel with all the PLAs and stuff in, most of them are Amazon or eBay anyway, most of the time. So it's almost like you also need to be doing traditional paid search as well. And when they've also got the brand they've got, if you use Seth Godin's Tribes, they've got like the cult of Prime. Prime was probably one of the most ridiculously intelligent things they could have done, because I would struggle to imagine there's anyone, even before they did Prime TV, anyone who over the course of a year they made money on that level of free delivery and this size of items. Like I've had walking pants delivered that like weigh over 50 kilograms, which should have just cost like 60 quid to send on their own. Multiple items like same day. Like it's almost like a lost leader, but it creates that cult. And then you have people running like, oh, I'm going to buy this off eBay or buy this off this random site. I can get the same thing near enough on Amazon. It might be 50p or a pound more, but it will definitely come tomorrow. And if I buy that plus something else for 20 quid or $20 in the US, it'll come by 1 p.m. So it's like, it's almost like an addiction ecosystem at that point.
Yeah, and they built a great business model. It'd be interesting to see what they do. Yeah, it was just in July 25th, search engine land, and talking about Amazon disappearance from Google Shopping is reshaping ad dynamics. And it's just maybe they just felt they're giving too much money to Google, so they just thought it's really, like you say, they're already kind of like the go-to anyway for e-commerce.
Well, I've probably done a lot of testing of like, if we start spending on Google Shopping ads in this way, what's the actual impact on sales for it? And what they probably tend to find is what I said, we'll say, oh, like, Dan's random shop's got this for sale. It's £40 plus $5.99 shipping. Go to Amazon. Oh, I can get it for £40, but I only paid for Prime, so it's free shipping. It'll definitely come tomorrow. And this is going to be a very British joke here. There's a very strong chance I won't have to use every. So,
Yeah, no, 100%. Because when I worked, famous supplement company, we had a problem in the fact we were selling it on our website. We had free delivery and stuff, but actually, if you go on Amazon, a lot of the products are being resold by other vendors, so it's cheaper product and also free delivery. So it's like, how do you compete with that in that sense? So
that's where it becomes, in my opinion, in the e-commerce space, an ecosystem of, well, if you are in that space, you've sold your product to the vendor, so you'll have made, you're not going to sell it at a loss to the vendor to then sell on. And then the vendor has at least sold it, so you may not get the same margin on it, but then the vendor will place more orders. So it's kind of like your ecosystem of revenue is going to be very diverse, and sometimes parts of that ecosystem will cannibalize each other. And I see it all the time when you sell for your own website and you sell for Amazon. The goal is, I want to sell more through my own site. It's like, right, well, you sell it for the same price on Amazon with free shipping. Offer free shipping on your site. Oh, we can't. Right, well, like, your user is web savvy. What else can you give them? What other incentive can you give them? Like, And that's where you start to get like the digital coffee card, like, oh, here's a stamp and I have 5 stamps, and let's use this supplement analogy, 5 stamps and you get a free shaker, or you get a free sweat wristband or something like that, or spend over £25 and get free protein bar type things and creatine sachets and stuff like that. It's you have to find another way of doing that incentivization. Otherwise, you can throw as much traffic and relevant traffic at the site as possible, but your user and then the consumer will be savvy enough to kind of go, well, can I get a free delivery on this? Oh, look, it's on Amazon. Oh, I need you to buy batteries as well, or something like that. And then you just bundled a load of stuff in an Amazon basket, sent it, and it's there by 12 the next day.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, especially if, people start buying more through ChatGPT or directly through the Google search results or that kind of thing. If that continues to kind of, growing if it starts happening more often, and then obviously Amazon have their own thing. So yeah, it's going to be tricky as a website to kind of get those conversions in future more than ever. But, yeah, we'll move on because obviously got a lot to cover. Well, we kind of touched on it, to be fair. So that's a good kind of switch. But where do you see like the future of the internet generally? And there's loads of stories out there about internet dying and stuff. But generally, like but the internet as a kind of ecosystem generally, and also the website, like I've had this discussion with a few people on the channel, but everyone has their point of view. Obviously, some see the website still as an important like presence for you to have, like if you're as a shop or something, it's like your shop front online, it's an important thing to represent who you are or what you do, even though traffic may go down in future. And then some see it as obviously a very important functionality in terms of like, well, the large language models and so on still needs to learn from it. And it'll be like a data source where they can pull out information and stuff. And so, yeah, do you see kind of websites disappearing or growing in importance, or and just the internet generally? Where do you see things go?
The first article online to declare that search was dying. So I'm going to start with search being dead and SEO dying, SEO is dead and everything else. So that was published in 1997. So we're on some fantastic borrowed time, given it died nearly 30 years ago. So God knows what we're doing. Maybe we're the hallucinations. But I think there's Inter Milan, the football team. They made a website in 1996. I think it was 96. I think they were the first football team or recognized website online. There's a lot in Italy at the time, like Nepolina Tomatoes also had a website, but I didn't touch it for 12 months. Don't ask how many pub conversations I've had to learn this. But they published that site, and they didn't have anything like, they had a static page for fixtures, a static page for the squad, and it was just an information-based thing. Now, if you go to their site now, it's hospitality, it's tickets, it's club shop, it's interactive, it's communications to a tribe, it's messaging, it's kids stuff. It's evolved into this plethoric environment to meet the needs of multiple different people. Like if you're going where you want press contacts, you want to buy a shirt, you're interested in going to your first game, it's evolved in that way, and that's in the last 30 years. All the internet is doing around now is going from the website being the final destination to being the website potentially being the final destination, and sometimes just being, oh, Sean has disappeared. I'm going to carry on. It being even the final destination, but now it's just a part of that journey. So you're going to have your LLMs using your website as data. You're going to use it as part of training sets. It's still, if you don't have that domain, you don't have that website, you still don't have that presence online. And that's still just as vital. Now, just because it isn't that endpoint anymore doesn't mean that it's influencing other things around, because until the LLMs, etc., start using your Facebook, your LinkedIn, and other things, which they may be doing to a certain point, your website is still one large variable that you control. It's your brand home, it's your news source, it's where you can publish. It's really one of the stronger areas. So like Inter Milan site, that's had to evolve over the last 30 years from something static. Now, I think with websites, they've always been in that linear journey. They've been the final destination. If you want, and there's parts of it which have divulged, like applying for jobs, for example. You used to have to go to a careers page on the site, look for jobs. Now there's job sites, there's LinkedIn jobs for applications. That's kind of divulged away. AI and LLMs will still need your site to train on and to use as a point for information. That doesn't mean that's a bad thing. It means you're controlling the narrative you're putting out there, and people still may use your site as a touch point. Like if you're doing research on an LLM, there's nothing to then stop that user eventually coming to your site at some point in that journey, either directly or through social or something else. But just because their research started at a different point, you can't trace that part of the journey anymore. It doesn't make it less valuable. Well, they still want potential validation. If it's a company they've never heard of before and they're looking at making a purchase, it might be a case of just getting that level of clarification. If you're looking to buy something, it might be checking the prices on the LLM, they're accurate kind of thing. It's going to serve different purposes, but I still think it's going to be important. John O. Alderson wrote a really good article on this around the internet not being URL shaped anymore. And I agree with this quite wholly, but it's now about the distribution of your message and how consistent that is and where it's being picked up and ultimately the touch points it's making, because you want, I'm hastening to say you want everything everywhere all the time, because you can dilute your messaging and you can have wrong messaging for other people. But there is an element of, like, and I touched on this earlier, say if you're running an e-commerce site now, you want the same content on, I don't know, new releases, matching and like looking at the fit of, so I was going to say like a shoe website, a sneaker website. We sell sports shoes. Pairing like, what does the fit look like? And showing it with the aspirational imagery. Then that gets disseminated down to your socials, your Instagrams, your TikToks. You still want, potentially, if you sell them more, well, Nike, for example, they used to sell tennis shoes. They became a fashion shoe, but some people will still buy the tennis shoe to play tennis. These monsters, not wearing fashion shoes. So they want to know durability. They want to have a look at some potential statistics. They want to potentially see it in action. They want to know, where can I go try this on? Because this isn't a fashion shoe. This is something I'm going to be running around in. I don't want it to break my feet to bits. So it's still quite important in that journey to have different parts of content, and knowing that it isn't just about looking at one type of content. It's having that different type across the different platforms and your site in a way where users can find it when they want to. Because, yeah.
No, sorry, I thought you said, yeah, that's exactly what Jamie D'Alessandro was talking about on my recent conversation with the team from AMSIF. And yeah, just like, the large language models AI is going to get very specific. You're going to have more conversational discussions with people, and they're going to need to pull that information from somewhere. And the more detail you put into your product pages, your product landing pages, and so on and so forth, the more chance you have of showing up. So all those things are still very much important to have on your website.
I think it's also, if AI is now part of our remit, it also makes the argument for cross collaboration with other marketing channels more important. A good example, I was over in Turkey in March at a conference with a few SaaS companies, and I gave the example that if you went onto Grok and typed in, they've got quite a heavily developer community, so they use Grok's quite a big referral source in terms of their charity, in terms of their AI traffic. If you type into Grok, how much is our product or product pricing, it was coming back with really weird pricing. And then when you actually dug into it a little bit further, it's because Grok was using a promotional tweet, which I assume was a post, or whatever you want to call it now. Sorry, Elon. A promotional tweet from 2022, which was posted and then boosted so that it reached an audience. And it was a student deal, and it had the product at like 33% its normal price. So then 3 years later, Grok is still using that tweet and saying, well, this is how much the product is. So then when you're a user, you're clicking through on that link and you're finding nothing in them that even says it's that price in the ballpark. That's one heck of a negative brand touch point. So you need to start looking at deprecation strategies across different platforms, and actually how consciously the information you're putting out there long term can do that. And I think for some companies, unfortunately, that's going to mean going through a lot of past promotional tweets and stuff like that and deleting them, or making sure we've got like unavailable after tags on web pages so they're not being included in the index, the AI mode LLMs and stuff. So it's just, yeah, it's an interesting path ahead of how we have to, I see as a more collaborative internet marketing internet than anything. But it's going to be disruptive, not just to SEO, but to a lot of channels.
Yeah. I think I used this example before, but yeah, there's this interesting one where I heard obviously people updating their service centers, and it was one of their more prominent ones, and they're trying to get it seen more in the search results and the AI results. And then the AI pulled up that it's actually shut. And that's because they had an article way back in 2014 about it being shut. And, so it's dangerous that there's going to have to be some like proper auditing going on.
And he's like, okay, great. Well, them companies that have gone, oh, we've written this newsletter, we've also published it to our blog, and it's included those promo things and everything else like that. It's as great as you need to repurpose and distribute content, it's going to be make sure you repurpose and you're distributing in a safe manner, because with this whole, there's this thing that's crept through in the past couple of years of being like, right, if you write a blog post, you then have to turn it into a video, you have to turn the video into 3 shorts, then you have to turn the transcript into 5 LinkedIn posts. And it's like, or you just do good distribution behind 2 or 3 of them and not scattered on it, because it's not going to be the right audience. Otherwise, we'd have just done the video first, not the blog. And I feel that needs to be tied back a little bit more, especially now people like ChatGPT are bringing in videos from YouTube and different elements like that.
Yeah, I mean, like, it should always be the case, but yeah, I mean, like, if it makes sense, then do it. It has got a lot of legs, and obviously push it out there wherever it needs to be. But, I used to, I must admit, like, I used to put short on like everything. I used to do so many short, and then I realized that actually just certain ones had more impact than others. I should put my time and effort into those, push them out, and not do everything, throw all the, crap at the wall and see what sticks or things,
No, definitely.
And just in terms of like the internet dying, so, and I don't know, obviously you get stuff like things get pushed to you in your personalized kind of news feeds and stuff. And I kept seeing these ones like the internet's dying and stuff like that. And one of those was like from Vice website. And it was just like the article was named "The Internet's Dead and He Killed It." And it was by Evan Robertson. And and they argued that the internet as it was known from the 1990s to 2010s is gone, and everyone contributed to its demise. And they're reminiscing about a time when the internet was a magical place filled with personality, rich, powerful, like interesting websites and forums, and a sense of like endless exploration. To like more like, now it's just full of like, trying to, never ending sludge, they called it. And like, full of TikTok and Instagram reels. And, they blamed AI for accelerating this decline and making search engines less reliable. And yeah, it's just interesting. That is not the first, like the only article that kind of says it like that. So it's interesting.
I think there's an element of, I agree, the internet has changed from the 1990s and the 2010s. I can't imagine trying to get a website in Netscape on like Pixel 3 right now. I don't imagine that would work. I mean, I don't think we was on like 2G back then. I think that was like WAP 2 or something like that. I mean, we can get back to those times if it's simpler, but the 2 things driving the change is, yes, we have advancing technologies, but then we also have users who are driving the change as well. And the only reason why the internet's full of, I think as they put it, TikTok and Instagram girls and influencers and all that is because those are the content types that people are resonating with more. And I kind of feel it's not a secret. It's been happening for ages. It's not like overnight YouTube influencers became a thing. It's not like overnight TikTok became a thing. It's been a thing, and some companies and some individuals have invested in it and others haven't. And I think there's that element of opportunity cost. But if that means the internet has died, then a new internet is being born in its place. Yeah. Internet in the 2010s was awful. I remember being like on MSN in like even like 2005, 2006, and Habbo Hotel and Neopets and all that. And it's like, I look back at it now and it's like, he literally went to Google, typed in saw 10 blue links. Actually, I disagree with that endless exploration thing, because yes, there might have been endless exploration, but you were given like a spork and asked to dig out a mountain. Whereas now you've actually been given the proper tooling, and there's already pre-laid mine shafts and the goblin carts from Harry Potter and all the rest of it, and taking you down deeper and stuff. And the path of information discovery has actually grown exponentially. It just might not be the path of information they want to present, and that's the difference. And yes, there's less reliability because people want the nuanced views. People want to discover new things from new points of view, new publications. It's technology's evolved, but users have evolved and also pushed that need as well.
Yeah, no, I totally get that point. I mean, I think it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I understand in the sense that there's certain websites that are so dominant, like as we said, like Amazon, shopping, YouTube, video. There's certain big websites that are just dominant, and it doesn't give anyone a kind of looking. And then there's kind of bloggers who, and this is probably where a lot of it stems from. The bloggers who have made some sort of living from doing a blog or whatever, and now they're not going to get a look in because there's a way.
Well, I look at something like YouTube, yeah, and I can remember like in mid 2000s where I think I went on it once or twice, and YouTube was literally the place where there were weird 2-3 minute like cat videos and things like that, and it wasn't a medium source. So they then repositioned themselves as a media source. Amazon, when they first launched their bookstore, they saw opportunities to pivot. At that time, there was other opportunities for other companies to do the same thing, and yet they're dominant now because over the past 2.5 decades, they've been successful at pivoting. And okay, they probably made some incorrect calls at times, but they've had a steady, YouTube being bought by Google probably helps either, but there's nothing to say that if Google bought Vimeo instead, for example, would that be grown up? But then there's also right time, right place, because like TikTok, and right now it's huge. I look at TikTok and I'm just like, isn't that just a Vines? Like, you can remember Vines, yeah?
Yeah, I like that.
And it's like Vines were like, if anyone doesn't know what Vines are, Google it, but it was basically TikTok, but 15 years ago. And it didn't get the uptake, and it fell off, and it disappeared. Now TikTok is like a brand new thing. Same with, what's one that Twitter bought? Periscope. Where you could live stream yourself from Twitter and do that. And now it's like, oh, here's Facebook Live, and it's big and popular. It's like, yeah, this happened 10 years ago, but the market wasn't ready for it. I think my other favorite example is one of the first fully production electric cars was the Electro Flockenwagen, and it was built in 1888. And it was fully, you could go to the forecourt, you could buy them. They fully worked. They were fully electric cars. They only had 1 horsepower. But the reason they didn't take off was because fuel was so cheap in comparison to the electric, and there wasn't the same awareness of environmental concerns. So again, like, none of this is really new. It's just, if you're telling me that some businesses look from an old TikTok's this new thing, well, you had Vines. This isn't a new thing. It was just it was an old idea rehashed, and it took off.
That's yeah, totally true. And I think there's always going to be like, however things change, because it's clear like this world has changed and people have less patience. They want answers quickly. That's what, and we've seen that, and that's why a mass amount of people adopt certain things, and we've seen it in the data. But there's always going to be those people that actually prefer something else, the old way of doing things. There's still people like obviously buy vinyl and stuff like that. There's always going to be that kind of group, what
I've still got a mini disc player in one of the boxes around me right now. Like I keep it and it may never get turned on again, but I still use that form. Not many people use that format, but yeah.
I mean, we've got last few sort of things. So instead of sort of obviously like your kind of forte is kind of traditional technical SEO, how much value does that have? Obviously, we're reading a lot about schema and what kind of impact that may or may not have. And obviously fast websites, we're going to have AI agents, using sites and stuff. Yeah. How much value do you still put into it? Obviously, I'm pretty sure I know the answer.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can touch on schema first since you drew that one out. So again, let's break it into SEO and GEO. So schema has the same level of influence for AI mode and AI overviews as it does in organic search. For Gemini, I can't say that, I'm not too sure, but when it comes to other LLMs, someone who used to be a ChatGPT, who's now a Hugging Face, did like a 3.5-hour video. I'm just trying to find the name of it. So it's Andrej Karpathy, and it's a YouTube video called The Deep Dive into LLM like ChatGPT. It's about 3 hours, 21 minutes long. The first 5 minutes are huge because all he does is he lines out, right, this is how we're going to approach things. And he outlines straight away, okay, ChatGPT has this page from your site. We want the text. So we strip out the CSS, the JavaScript, the code comments, tracking stuff, schema, anything that isn't just the text. Then it goes to processing. So the schema doesn't even make it the processing part. So the schema doesn't influence the retrieval part, and it doesn't influence the processing part because it's stripped. What it does help with is in the traditional organic search elements of Google being able to tie entities, other things like that, and also rich results in normal search. It doesn't, I did a study, I've done a couple of studies on this, actually pulling like loads of URLs cited in AI mode and AI overviews and then looking at the schema correlations. There's pretty much none. Like most of the websites have organization, most of them have website, the standard schema types. I looked at travel sites. There was a 20% correlation of booking action plus trip type on a couple of them, but like the numbers are so low, it's like there's almost no correlation to schema inclusion being cited in AI. But I was able to find in all this data. Now, it doesn't mean it's redundant, because obviously it's important from the organic side. You need to be included in different things. Like if you're not surfaced enough, things like common crawl won't crawl you, then you won't be in a data set, and that data set won't be downloaded by the LLMs, you won't become part of training data. But schema specifically for that GEO and AI stuff, the data I've looked at doesn't give out the credibility. Moreover, when we look at more traditional technical SEO, I think, obviously I'm slightly biased, but I think it has a place, but it needs to evolve in itself. Because I think traditional best practices for technical SEO on most websites are relatively static now. And okay, like we're getting things like the soft navigations API potentially for better call it by monitoring on JS and SPAs and things like that, which is good, but we're generally pretty stable. Like we know what good is and we know what it looks like. The part I see needing to evolve then is around, like you said, how agents interact with sites. Like when an agent visits your site, is it rendering JavaScript? Is it able to access phone numbers? Is it able to access information? Like, are we putting things in on clicks, in A links? Like, how's that forming? And that's what I feel we need to start looking at more from a technical side. I'm actually doing a talk at Brighton San Diego on technical SEO for LLMs, and I think for the most part, it's just still straight up information retrieval, but then it's the bots have changed. We have a new set of bots that are coming to the sites, and then we also have other things, like I said, like econ crawls and people like that who have been downloading our data as like an archivist perspective, who we're now giving it as training sets. So yeah, I'd say it's still got value. It's still important, but it's still in its own right. It has to evolve slightly just because again, the internet's changed. 5 years ago, we didn't have AI crawlers pounding the sites and things like that. And I think Chris Green did a good study as well on the LLMs.txt. And I've personally, about a year ago, built up my own log file analyzer. I hook it up to the OpenAI API, just so I can do analysis quick on it. And no one I've seen who's got an LLMs.txt file appears to be getting any server hits from anyone on the LLMs.txt file other than users going, oh, look, it's an LLMs.txt file. So then from the Google Search Engine Live conference, they likened it to a meta keywords tag. So that said, everyone needs to know there. But yeah, so kind of wrapping up the technical side, it still has value, but it does need to evolve to continue to add value.
So what one area would you focus on that still be, is speed still like a real important thing people should be focused?
Yeah, I think speed's still important, but I think to stay ultimately relevant, it's going to be, in my opinion, it's going to be around JavaScript. So this is another reason why Perplexity buying Chrome could be huge, because Chrome obviously renders for pages. I can give Perplexity better rendering capabilities for pages and information. Whereas at the moment, the general consensus is that LLMs don't render JavaScript on a page. So again, if you've got agents coming to your site to extract information, or you've got LLMs being more active, or even if your data is not being rendered and included in training set data, that for me is the big area at the moment. And I know JavaScript always feels like an unfinished puzzle at the best of times. Now I think this is great. The website works in a browser. Google, you're doing dynamic rendering for Google. Now we need to actually start getting it rendered properly for AI agents and LLM crawlers, and making sure third-party archivists can access this data as well for training set data. It's just another slightly different paradigm to add to a already relatively difficult topic with developers.
Hey, last thing, and we're done. Real quick one here. I messed up in the video. Didn't make much sense. So the question posed to Dan was just about how do you get buy-in from the C-suite? So he did a great job as usual answering it. So I just wanted to clear it up.
Yeah, I think the main thing is understanding and trying to understand what it is they already have perceptions of and what they already, to a point, know. Because like I said, I talk about multimodal search quite a lot. That's been in things like The Economist and Marketing Week and ad tech for at least 5-6 years as a phrase being used around. If they're picking up, like you said, about a Vice article, or I don't know, in my opinion, towards the end of every quarter when Verge need a slight boost in numbers of people looking at the ads, they write an incendiary article on SEOs, and then we'll all flock to it given we had impressions and they're happy. But they've already been exposed to a lot of information. It's trying to understand what it is they know, but rather than kind of going, right, what do you know? It's just approaching it from look, there's a lot of information happening out there at the moment. I want to help make this as most real for you as I can in this circumstance. It's about trying to give them as much context to, because ultimately they care about the company they're with. They don't care if any other companies facing issues, they may learn from it. But if you can find a way to contextualize it, provide any kind of quantification if you can, show impact areas, and actually make it real and in situ for them. Because again, I think C-level reporting's been a big player of mine for quite some time. Even when I used to work in-house, email marketing, I used to run email marketing many, many years ago for a chain of UK care homes and retirement living. What went up to like head of and C-level was like one graph, and it was like, here's your open rate percentage, here's this percentage. It's like, well, that's a very myopic linear view. And I think some of the information dissemination upward in a lot of businesses does do that, but that's understandable because they're time poor. They need quick information. But now there's a lot of information happening, and they need to understand it in that context. If you understand they've only had a narrow view on it, how can you explain AI in that narrow view and then slowly start turning them to something else? Or like, they don't have to panic as much because, I don't know, I mean, all the news, like publishers, for example, is a good example because they've been hit quite hard over recent years. Just in the changing of the internet, slowness, like the business models, different elements like that, and also just Google slightly being harsh on publishers, taking content, discover different things like that. That's great. But then if you're an e-commerce business and your CMO is reading about how all these other businesses are struggling, you almost need to give him then the context of, you don't need to worry about this so much because we're in a very different space and actually we're doing okay. And rather than using it as a sales opportunity, I'd see it as a trust opportunity, and having that, addressing the pain point and the problem statements as early as possible.
Yeah, they're really good points, and I agree, to be honest. And I think that's the thing, they usually only get a very surface level data set, like traffic numbers. So it's like, it's just about getting in subtly sending those kind of messages, like you say, tie it in with the context of whatever organization you work with, and try and, it's like a education piece. And obviously if you could put that, and we've tried to put in kind of different formats, even if it's like a Q&A session or like a short video or whatever it could be, that they can digest it in different ways depending on how they like to, but always tie it back to the original sort of business, because that's all they care about. Like you say, they don't, like you say, they probably in their own time, they might read about case studies and that, but they don't care too much about the other companies. It's all about, unless it's a direct competitor.
Yeah, all they care about is are they still progressing? And if they're seeing something else happening bad online, just reassurance that it's not happening to them. And if it is, but it's already on hand, and that's one of the first things you said. They might just you can't communicate this on a rag status. You can't communicate it in like one sentence. It has to be multi-format. And I think even like the proactiveness with it will go a long way, rather than waiting for them to come to you, going to them first will stand you in good stead.
Yeah, 100%. And I've experienced that. If you're the one saying that this shit is going down in the sector, we're, like you say, we're doing okay, or we're at least looking at it. We know what to do. We've got a strategy, rather than you're waiting for the bridge to fall down and you're like, oh, okay.
Well, is it?
You do think about it.
Yeah, you're even at the point of like, oh, like this stuff's happening. We're doing okay, but if you've got any questions or concerns, let's book in 15 minutes. Versus them kind of going, oh, I've read in The Economist, I've read in this is happening, because then you're on the back foot and they've had a lot of information consumption at that point, and then they may have started Googling it, and it just opens up a door for further misinformation and further panic. And I just don't know. You're not necessarily on the back foot, but it makes the conversation harder because you're then pushing against preconceived judgments.
Yeah. And if you are sending out like monthly reports or whatever, because a lot of the time that's what feeds up to the, people take snippets of that, then they send it up the funnel or whatever, up the ladder. And so it's down to you in a way. You need to adapt your reports. So the main things I need to know about are C.
Or even do a separate report purely that goes up to them. That's something we started doing 2-3 years ago. Because they don't want pages of graphs. They don't want that. And literally, even if it's just a simple, like, this says this says that, one page, it's simple. They can look at it, they can skim it. The way I've looked at it is, if we're all still working in the office, if that person in C-level can read all the key points on a report and walk from their office to a lift, then it's succinct enough and it's hit the points. If they're then having to sit down and invest in it, that's when I think you have issues.
100%. It's been, as usual, dropped so many great bits of wisdom there. So I really appreciate it. And thanks for joining me today, Dan. It's been awesome.
No, I really appreciate you reaching out and having me on. And I've watched a few episodes over the years. Yeah, really happy to have been invited.